Okay, today is our last subject lecture to our series of project organization and information systems or management. And yeah, today I wanted to really kind of re-look a little bit at leadership communication in new workplaces. This is where one of the core chapters, it's chapter 11 if I'm not mistaken in the book. And it gives you a little bit the history and background on how we came actually to talk about leadership and yeah, current developments as well, and where it actually has taken us. And again, a lot of approaches that we actually inherently adapt one-to-one in project management methodologies. So if you look at PMI or any of the professional bodies, they copy and paste a lot of the concepts actually from leadership theory. Now, the objectives of this session is how conceptions of leadership have changed historically. I mentioned this already, how leadership models are often linked to economic and political and social issues. Yeah, so you will see as well, a lot of the new leadership theorems came out of the challenge of existing kind of political context, namely people not being happy with what was perceived to be a criteria for leadership to be associated. Then the differences among the various traditional models of leadership and the various perspectives in the new leadership tradition. The new leadership traditions are actually not that new. It's more the recent developments that kind of talk about leadership follower concepts that really kind of are at the vogue. And then is where the evolving role of communication in leadership research. So this is kind of what we are trying to cover. Yeah, let's get started with it. Yeah, and by the end of the session you should know this all. So the traditional perspectives on leadership really started off with recognizing first of all that leadership may be something objective, right? And this is really what we inherited. So leadership was perceived as something that you could become or that you would be by being born into a leadership family. And this was a very strong belief, and many people still believe this. Yeah? So even in some fashionable sports, you can see, like football, for example, that a lot of existing football stars kind of nurture and really coach the youngsters to become football stars too. Sometimes this pays off. Yeah? So we have some famous examples where the father was a strong enough leader, if you want, yeah, to make the young one as well into a football leader. But there are certain problematics with it. So what we want to kind of recognize now, it's actually, if you look at the empiry and you really look at the data and you kind of analyze leadership, you will see it's actually not an objective feature that makes a good leader. So it's very kind of a negotiated concept socially. Yeah, so you can have a good leader in a social construct. Yeah? So we can probably agree what a good leader is if we look at different examples and we make sense of it. But there's already a bias to what we have experienced as good leadership. So some of the good leadership trait we would probably say like, no, this is bad leadership. Yeah? This is actually imposing or patronizing. Yeah? So those are already a few terminologies that actually cropped up as a revolt against former leadership styles. Yeah? So treat leadership with a lot of care. Yeah? It's a cultural concept, and what may work in one community or team, yeah, may not work in another one. So be aware of it. Yeah? Now, leadership is well a buzzword and a sexy concept that fuels leadership industry. So if you think already back of the, maybe not the system lecture, I recognize that nobody liked that too much, but already the cultural revolution, when we started talking about creating a culture of belonging, this is already kind of abandoning the concept of leadership, right? Because we recognize that a leader is part of a culture, so and it's a shaper, but it works both ways. We have as well the subordinates or team members that shape the culture too. So here we recognize already that leadership alone is maybe a risky concept, but it's still quite sexy. Yeah, so we have a lot of political leaders. We are not talking about the followers, yeah? Or we talk about Apple, yeah? We talk about job. Well, anyway, there are a lot of leaders that are kind of standing for a whole company, and the books are often with a leading figure, not with the followers. So this is maybe an issue as well of selling it and oversimplifying. Yeah. So we need to problematize this idea of leadership a little bit to clearly identify the phenomena with essential features, and we need to explore it as well as a complex and ambiguous and uncertain feature. Yeah, so you will see at the end of this lecture, we have a good understanding of how we can define leadership, but we become as well aware of how leadership is still perceived. And that in its own gives you as well a playground of what your team members may expect from you. Now, the baseline definition of leadership was, here from Stotgill, the process of influencing the activities of an organized group in its effort towards a goal setting or goal achievement. And arguably, this is still very much true for your project management situation, right? So you will be evaluated on this to a certain degree, and we have still strong influencing theorems. So influencing is still a very hot topic for project managers, and they're actually very sophisticated psychopolitical theories that have come out of this. Yeah? So in project management, we have actually embraced that quite heavily. Now here they recognized three elements. So one being influence, one being the group. Yeah, so we have as well group dynamics and individuals within the group, and the goal considered essential to leadership. So it's kind of a input, output, and process model. Again, this is kind of old school already with our power theorems. We actually refine that substantially. Now, how does it influence occur? So examine three perspectives that have tried to answer this question. And the first one is probably the oldest one. That is a trait approach. Yeah, sorry. Hello. This is actually quite small print. So the trait approach is probably the oldest one. And this is a great man approach to leadership. Can you recognize any figures as a great man? So there's all kind of political incorrectness in this, by the way. But a great man, who would you recognize as such nowadays, maybe? Trump. Yeah, Trump. Yeah, he actually exactly. When we come to the actual traits. Yeah, that some of the research proposed, it's exactly that. Yeah, so you're quite right. Trump. Yeah. Any other one? Yeah, which one? Vladimir Putin. Yeah. Contemporary examples. Yeah. So and they feature as well this grand man approach. Yeah. Yeah, but if you look behind it, Putin, old KGB history, lived even in Berlin. So he has superior information, and Trump has a company empire behind him. Yeah, so again, we would probably question how great they are, really. Yeah, so with so much kind of supporting resources, I would even argue that some other people maybe as well there was great men. Yeah, but okay, so great men, we recognize it straight away. Yeah, some characters. And it was leadership based on personal qualities one is born with. Yeah? So it's a little bit what I kind of criticized up front. And the acronym that came from the researchers that kind of tried to establish this was the WAM. I don't say it right. But it was the political incorrect acronym for tall, handsome, white alpha male of privilege. Yeah, and this came, of course, from good statistical. What do you think? Where do these traits come from? What do you think? What in a research empiry? How could we establish something like that with empiry? Is that possible? What do you think the researchers did? It's crazy stuff, right? Tall, handsome, white, alpha male. I can tell you now, we have a chancellor at our university. She is none of this. Yeah. No, actually she is white. But that's about it. Maybe handsome, yeah, I should say this, but again, this is up to taste, yeah. But so, why is that? Well, what do you think? And this was a team of researchers from a very reputable university, and they went out and did questionnaire surveys in all companies that they could find that were successful companies, yeah? And they asked, what are the traits that you actually recognize in a leader? And they had a whole list of things that they came up with, yeah? So they looked at, of course, aristocracy, yeah? What were they renowned for? So you can notice here, this is like a very Western-leaning type of archetype leader. And then they looked at the correlations, the statistical correlations. And it turns out a lot of the leadership roles were owned by tall, handsome, white, alpha male of privileged people. Yeah? You are not explaining here causality, you're just establishing that there's something, how you're recruiting and promoting people. Yeah, so, but again, this was still a dominant figure in today's society. And ironically, I was just thinking, both examples that you have given me, Trump and Putin, yeah, they actually fit this, right? This is actually quite scary. Yeah, so that we still find leaders with those characteristics. Yeah, this theory was kind of sought out in 1870. Yeah, this is how far we were advanced, and we still find these characteristics. Or traits, traits in this case. Yeah. Now, other important traits that were not so much promoted in this model was as well intelligence, verbal skills, and self-confidence. Yeah? Notice here, this is not knowledge or understanding. Yeah? It's self-confidence and verbal skills and intelligence. Yeah? So it shows you as well what probably seemed to be the classical school. And actually saying so, the trait approach copied a lot as well from the Greek. The Greek, to become a full-blown citizen, was rhetoric. Yeah? So you were supposed to learn how to speak, how to express yourself, and that was one of the highest traits of civil society. But that's another story. Now, this was still popular until the 1940s, and this is actually just referring to our research area, right? So we still find these traits nowadays in the belief of a lot of community. A lot of people still think this makes a good leader. Yeah. Shall I give horrendous examples? Okay, I give just two horrendous examples. I was to a conference with my supervisor at the time of my PhD, who was Singaporean. And we have just a height difference. This is it. I searched, he looks a lot older than me, but he clearly doesn't. So we arrived in Sweden at the conference, and the conference receptionist addressed me, "Oh, which professor are you? And your student, where is he?" And he had got the roles upside down. Yeah? My supervisor was, of course, my supervisor, and I was a student at the time. Yeah, so there's still the stereotype, which is probably, it shows you, it's still in people's mind. Yeah. Now, there were, of course, limits to the trait approach. First of all, if you really kind of analyze leadership and influencing, then you will see that these ones don't necessarily always achieve the outcome. Yeah? So they may be in the leadership positions, formally, in roles, but they may not actually stand up to what we perceive as leadership. So there was an inconsistency of research findings, no consensus on key traits of leaders, and again, there was a clear observation of, so, I mean, if you think about it, if you go into any competitive environment and you have a project team, you will have some tall, handsome, white, alpha male people from privilege, yeah, but you will have so many that it's again the opposite, it's true too. Yeah, so a lot of them will not be leaders. Yeah, so it's a crazy, well, it's not a crazy, but it's a very thin theory. So quite frankly, it isn't a theory. Yeah? It's more like a wish of maybe some people there. Yeah. Now, there was as well an attempt to establish universal traits, no attention to leadership context, and again, this didn't really work, so hence well, we don't even talk about this as a theory anymore. And there was no attention to role of followers. Leaders aren't leaders without followers. And ethics of attributing leadership skills to inherent traits was as well kind of, it's arbitrary, right? This is basically discrimination in its initial sense. Now, this was followed kind of in the from the style approach, and this came really out of the dissatisfaction with the previous approach. Yeah, so the style approach became dominant in research between 1940s and 60s, and keep in mind, in this time we had the world wars in a lot of the, well, as the term emphasizes, Second World War in a lot of our world, and leadership styles seem to be put into question here. So here was a focus more on specific leadership behaviors. So how does the leader actually engage? And Lewin was one of the one that kind of took out of the Greek ideas history, if you want, some of the most dominant traits. This is autocratic, laissez-faire, and democratic. What was again autocratic? Well, we had that already when you think back of the initial Marx-Weber discussion. Well, what was autocratic again? Well, what is the power that you're exercising, for example? Yeah?
The authority is the master.
Yeah, oh sorry, so actually you're spot on, yeah? So as a leader, you are exercising power by, well, basically disciplining is one, yeah? But as well by actually your role and your decision-making power, yeah, if you want, yeah? And you are actually exercising this from your hierarchical status. Now, laissez-faire was another one. So again, if you look at that, just to remind us, autocratic styles, yeah, in leadership, like project management, is still favored in project organizations because we see a clear impact on productivity. So empirically, we can actually look if somebody is autocratic, do the work, and the person is under threat or fear of losing the job or has to perform, then it's a very direct form. Yeah? And so productivity does increase. Yeah? If he wasn't doing anything before and you tell him to do that, of course, then we have like a kind of relationship there. But there is a limit to this. Autocratic style, kind of, you are very likely to lose the participation, people to sing along. People may not know why they're actually doing something. Yeah, so often the reasons or the purpose of the team member performing certain elements may get lost out of hand, and you're really losing here participation from your followers. If you exercise consistently in autocratic style, people will be watching the clock and run off at 4 o'clock and like, woo, work is over. Yeah, so it's something like that. So whilst with the democratic style, we had the opposite observation. So overall performance does improve, but you may not achieve the targeted productivity levels. Yeah, because you have now team members or followers that evaluate for themselves what is the most pressing item, right? And if you think back at the systematic or at the organization as a system, we have different localities. So we may prioritize what we have to do differently. Yeah? So as a leader, you have a central stage, so you have to inform this. But the democratic style will be, empirically speaking at least, be the most involving, but in terms of productivity, autocratic is slightly superior, but targeted. And it's a bigger effort for you as a leader. So you will probably have that as a dilemma when you're a project manager. And with this came as well tension between satisfaction and productivity and style. Oh yeah, sorry, this is literally what I was on about. And then as well the Ohio State leadership studies kind of focus on consideration and initiating structure. So what does that mean? So initiating structure is kind of the autocratic style of giving you roles or tasks to perform against which you will be evaluated, right? And the democratic one is, of course, more focusing at considering the team members, right? To involve them. Like, well, what is your view? What do you think we should push onwards to achieve our project goal? Right? So it's a very different emphasis. Now, in reality, the combination is a very powerful one. Yeah. So recognize when production is needed, explain that as well to your team members, and then orchestrate the effort. Then it's empirically the strongest approach. Yeah? But this is easy for me to say. If you read the studies, that was actually incredibly difficult. Now the emphasis on consideration leads to higher morale, kind of not surprising, right? Emphasis on the initiating structure leads to higher productivity, potentially. But as I said, you potentially use as well the participation. Or the other way around. So if you go to toilet, you can bet on it that your team will have a break too. Yeah. There's a very little incentive in an autocratic style to not seize opportunities as well in a reverse logic. Now, leaders emphasizing both features considered most effective, but again, there's a threshold. Yeah? From that, we had as well Blake and Mountain's managerial grid, extensive findings through 5 leadership styles, and here it went already into a dichotomy with as well follower behavior. So they had kind of impoverished, country club. But what is impoverished? What do you think? Actually, I can show you the model. I have it here. So we have here the impoverished style. This is concern for production is low, and concern for people is low. Yeah? So that is impoverished style. What could that be? What do you think? As a leader, what would you do?
Not very much.
Exactly, spot on, yeah? So there's a certain complacency about, yeah? And impoverished style is, I suppose you have to see that in time, this is kind of 40s, 60s. So this is still, I don't know how to frame this political agenda. There was still a certain snobbery around. Not that snobbery has gone away, it's still a phenomenon. But there was like, the impoverished, they kind of don't care, they don't do stuff. Yeah? So a lot of bad preperception went into this. But this is where this came from. And you can probably see where they saw themselves in country club style, so they probably had access to different elements here. So country club style, what is this? So here we have concern for people is high, right? But we have still very low concern for production. Actually, this is still true in my local golf club. Yeah? If you go to the Time House Golf Club, you will see this. This phenomenon is actually true. Yeah. So high concern for people, but very low concern for production. Yeah. So what could I mean? What does that mean, leadership-wise? What do you think?
Have a jolly good time, but do
Yeah, you're spot on. Yeah. So barbecue and having a good time and you're making sure everybody's happy, like very people-centric. Yeah, it's very important. When it comes to concern for production, for example, upgrading the clubhouse or building something, even if you have a lot of money in the golf club, you would think this would kind of come in like, let's upgrade it, make it a little bit nicer. No, actually, if you go there, go in the room that looks on the golf course, it smells like, maybe I'm going too far here, but there was a potential for improvement. It's still kind of a certain style. So people are very happy and very considered, but although they have like incredible income, the production or improvement was very low. And this is kind of the same here. The country club style is focusing very much on pleasing the people, but productivity is not so important. Then we had the middle road style. So this was 5-5. So you can see they had to kind of play around with mathematics. I don't know how they came exactly to this. Yeah. So clearly this must be a spherical analysis. But here you have the concern for people and concern for production kind of halfway. So both care. So this is like you turn up, but again, then when production gets too emotional for the workers, you kind of swing back and say like, okay, we don't have to be so productive. And then when people kind of feel left out, other way around, when people are like, let's not work at all, you're like, no, okay, we have to do some work, So this is kind of the middle road. And then we have the team style. Now here you kind of trim your whole team on productivity, but you want to pull everybody along this way. So you play with active motivation games, and here you have basically given up on people, and you're like, have you fulfilled your task or role? Tick box, yes, no, okay, you have to go. So something like that. This is probably the harshest. So this was kind of the perspectives that they arrived on. And I have already made jokes about this, so emphasis was still only on formal leaders, so there was no appreciation. If you had a willing team, right, if you had a great team that wants to do the work anyway, then even with not turning up and not caring, you could have amazing products. So again, not surprising if you do any studies in those formats. There is no empiric. You establish that it's true, that it's not true. If you do it in large quantities, you will see that it's very non-same. You may have as well flipped the coin and come up with something else. So difficult to establish universal leadership styles due to situational factors. And this was as well kind of the trait. They recognized repeatedly that this is true from one situation as it is not true to another situation. And here they were actually onto something. So this is a theorem that became actually quite powerful, and we have actually embraced that. So here we came to the situational and contingency approach, and those are still incredible. By the way, the contingency approach is still APM. So if you do the APM leadership accreditation, you can basically take this approach. I will tell you now that it's already outdated, but this is still in practice. So in theory, we have pushed on and have kind of refined this, but this is still a dominant leadership approach that is being taught or coached often nowadays. So here it is. So the situational contingency approach argues that contextual factors such as structure of task, power of the leader, and size of work group mediate leadership approach adopted. Wait a minute, I've mixed here something up. So size of work group mediate leadership approach adopted. So in other words, if you turn it around, the leadership approach is very much defined by the factors. So size of work group, power of the leader, and task structure. Now with this, you have Fiedler's contingency model. Has somebody done in their paper situational leadership or contingency? I saw at least 2 or 3 papers. I may have seen the same paper, to be fair, but Fiedler was one. This became as well Blanchard situational leadership. They're still super popular. And if you work with military or any of the departments, this is still expected to be a conduct. Or you will see that your team members, if they come from the military, will hold you accountable. They will say like, oh, this was poor leadership. Didn't you see that I was not motivated and I didn't understand what to do? You should have told me what to do. And actually, we still fall into that trap. So as well as team members, to kind of ask for that. So we have a preconception of leadership styles. So this is still a very strong one in this regard. So effectiveness of organization based on 2 interacting factors. This is personality of leader measured on 2 dimensions. This is task orientation versus relationship orientation. And it is... Wait a minute, this is correct. And, sorry, here we are, and on the situation context on 3 dimensions, leader-member relationship. So here we have already actually the recognition, right, that leadership is like something that is interacting, and structure of task, and position power of leader. And with structure of task, we had as well wonderful things like, for example, a contract that you give to somebody to do work, right? So you have actually taken a symbolic device rather than interacting with the people. This suddenly accounted for it and explained as well different notions. Now with this, you had use of least preferred coworker scale measure. So this was actually leadership personality, so they were still playing around with this. But by the way, here leadership personality was something that was coached and cultivated. Yeah, so we still do this. If you think about this, yeah, very naively, you have somebody that tells you how to behave and runs around with you and evaluates every situation. Now, this is nearly the psychologist, right? So this is nearly Sigmund Freud running around with you, yeah? Or if you want Jung, yeah, Jung is a little bit more intense, but this is actually a very personalized refinement, right? But we have this now as a common method. So a lot of project manager go as well into coaching, yeah, to coach kind of junior project manager, how to be more effective as a leader, right? So here to assess where you are, you kind of look at your past interactions, your past situations, and you ask, who is your least preferred coworker? Yeah? Who's your biggest challenge? Yeah? And then you can see a high least preferred co-worker score is often high relational oriented. Yeah, so you have a co-worker that quite openly celebrates that he doesn't like you. Like, hello, I just say this in the room, not to you. Yeah? So then you know he's probably not the biggest fan of you. Yeah, but this shows as well that as a leader or as a person, you prefer to have a relationship with a person. Yeah? But if it's a low LPC, so you have literally no issues with nobody. Yeah, so even with the people that kind of pour coffee over your drawing to kind of show their disapproval, you're like, yeah, it's just coffee, it's no problem. Yeah, then and they still do the task. Then you have a high task orientation. So, and of course, the argument is effectiveness of leadership style depends on the situation. And the key is to kind of look through that. And it's a basis for adjustment. So that is a wonderful, is there? Yeah. Oh no, okay. So the evaluation comes later. But here it was as well in uncertain situations. High LPC leaders first seek support from group members and then focus on the task. And in uncertain situations, low LPC leaders focus primarily on task. Once the task is accomplished and is assured, then focus on relational management. And again, it has both its place. If you think back, what would you prefer? Would you prefer a leader that kind of us, every team member, and then kind of act on it? Or would you prefer a leader that, here's a problem and deals with it, and then comes back and says, like, here, this is what happens, you have to adjust for this, you have to adjust for this? But both are legitimate styles, actually, still around, yeah? But which one do you feel is more appropriate? First one? Yeah, well, why would you prefer that?
So we get many ideas from the audience about it.
Yeah. Yeah, so here as a team member, you learn actually more. You understand what's going on. Here as a team member, you are just coping with adjustments, right? So you have to be very good in your role to just adjust from one day to the other. But as a leader, here you are a lot more cognitively able. Yeah? Here you have actually the luxury of other people's perspective to evaluate. Yeah? So this is as well a lot easier at the beginning. But the irony is many young leadership positions, so if you structurally a leader, a lot of people start first doing this, yeah, because there's a lack of confidence to engage the team members. Yeah? But this is the easier one, ironically. Yeah? Now there were of course as well critiques, particularly with the contingency approach. So exclusive focus on former leaders, yeah, so this is true. You have of course, particularly if you embrace your team members, you will have probably team members that will lead with answers because they have a clear understanding of the problem. Yeah? Or the opposite. They make very bold statements, I have no idea of the situation. But, so those two dynamics often exist. Yeah? But there was a certain issue with just recognizing kind of structurally a leader. So literally the critique that you gave earlier on. Yeah? So here you have as well the focus on leadership personality, suggest need to fit situations to leaders rather than leaders to situations. So this is as well, does that make sense? So arguably you can kind of parachute the right leaders in for the right situations. but then if you have a different situation, you should use a different leader. And so that is actually an odd argument. So as a leader, this is very good for your promotion. You can say like, oh, you have exposed me to those situations. It's according to my style, this is not right. You have really made a mess here. It's your responsibility. But there's, of course, well, there's an inconsistency basically. And it's as well inconsistent research findings, including questions about LPC instrument. So as well, kind of the evaluation seems to be very personal, if you think about it, of course. The co-worker that you like least, there are all kinds of aspects that can play into this. There can be elements of feeling threatened competitively. There can be simple things like he likes the other football team, and you don't like him for this. Just to give a few examples, right? So this is a strange notion. Now, the summary of the traditional leadership research: decades of research have failed to show relation between specific leadership behaviors and employee performance, and it's still very difficult. So empirically, if you kind of run it large scale, you will see that there's very little relevance. In cases, if you look with those styles, you will probably see that they work. Particularly some of the criteria, they come from a statistical analysis. So it's behavior shown, it's traits that are there. But again, the question if there's a causality is really questionable. So those are social constructs, right? So Foller's often left out of the equation as well, which makes it really questionable overall, because in the end, this is kind of part of the team approach or the actual production, if you want. And then you have as well rudimentary view of communication as information transmission, and uncritical view of very idea of the leader and leadership. So it's absolutely idealized and very difficult to test actually. Now with new approaches to leadership, we had kind of leadership as symbolic action system or idea really. So this emerges from simultaneously with corporate culture approach. And here we are already, so you can see this is the 80s. This came after the 60s, 70s, right? Where we actually recognize that leadership is as well part of creating a culture, and it's embedded. And here the view of the leader is as shaping symbolic realities. And what happened in the 70s on the economic market? Was it still the predominant American UK industry base? Economically speaking, who was entering into the economic market large scale? Do you know? Yeah? Yeah, Japan, China, yeah, and they had completely different leadership systems. Yeah? So the culture was already inherent in models from South Korea, from Japan. They had that already. Yeah, and they were suddenly the new economic leaders. So the American leadership theorists or scholars were like, oh, wait a minute, they have completely different leadership styles. How is this coming about? Now, this came, well, this is actually one definition, so let's go for that. Leadership is realized in the process whereby one or more individuals succeeds in attempting to frame and define the reality of others. Leadership depends on the existence of individuals willing to surrender, that's very dramatic, but at least in part, the powers to shape and define their own reality. And this is kind of where visionary leadership came from, yeah? If you think about it. So people actually kind of considering like, oh, okay, maybe I should now prioritize on these aspects and be a little bit more supportive to my co-members to actually get feedback so we can achieve it as a team, right? So this was kind of a breakthrough and came basically about with a cultural, I didn't want to use corporate culture, but with a cultural theory, right? And here leadership not a thing, but a process that emerges in daily interaction. So they recognize as well that you have even in your team leadership, yeah? So it's not just a structured feature of here in the hierarchy, this is the leader and this is your team members or followers, but leadership exists as well within the team, of course, and leadership changes, right? It's a dynamic concept. So here the key challenge for leaders is to manage meaning so that followers pursue desirable ends And this is as well where the wonderful cultural stuff from Schein came from, or Münzberg later. Leadership is the manipulation of culture. But again, this is the managerial view, right? We had as well Greets and Dietz, who kind of argued against that. But again, so this was kind of where this came from. Now, another element was as well the transformational leadership. Not surprisingly, this came from Burns, Harvard Business School. And he was like, no, this is visionary and leadership changing. I'm not sure about this. Yeah? He then said, distinguish transactional and transformational leadership style. And he said, no, transformational leadership, we still have these charismatic leaders. This must be a thing. I find an empiri. So he argued transactional leadership adopts managerial worldview, so sets goals and expectations and provides rewards, depending. Yeah? So it's a transaction. So your team members, yeah, if you want them to do something and you have them on Einheit, you say like, hey, you do this for me, I pay your contract, whatever. Yeah? So we often do this with subcontractors, right? So we give them a contract, you deliver this piece of work, I check that you have done it, then I give you pay in exchange. So this is probably the easiest way. Other ones are, so there can be even light ones. You did the job, I have a look and I tell you you have done a great job. It can be soft as such as well, right? The other one that he recognized, and by the way, this is still very powerful approach, of course, in our projects, right? If you go on a construction site, this is still pretty dominant. Yeah? On the other side, we had the transformational leadership that binds the leader and followers together in a higher moral pursuit or purpose. Purpose. Leader raises aspirations, so followers act beyond self-interest. Yeah. Yeah, and again, you can see here the binding element. If you look at the criteria, you'll recognize it maybe from the traits. Yeah. This was then developed further from the transformational leadership style, and we are back at charisma, inspiration, individualized consideration, and intellectual stimulation. Yeah, so those were still quite strong. Here, transformational leadership style sometimes referred to as a neo-charismatic approach because of the focus on the leader vision arose at the time of the crisis for US companies in the 1980s. Yeah. What was in the 1980s in America? Does anybody know? Next to great music. Yeah? If you don't know what I'm talking about, just YouTube. 80s music. You will be surprised. Fashion and music went a new way. Yeah? Yeah, what was the crisis? Does anybody know? But when did we have the first oil crisis? Well, so at the time the economy went down, we had kind of energy concerns, and with this production was too expensive. Yeah, so a lot of the US companies couldn't actually compete. Yeah, this was not just a US phenomena, as well in the UK we had actually enormous problems with the competing markets. So shortly afterwards the Japanese economy actually crashed. Yeah, but that's a different story. So we had actually a problem with the visionary setting, or at least that was kind of blamed, and the neo-charismatic leadership to give direction and leads through troubling waters. Yeah, so this was the economic time, a little bit like what we arguably have now, where you had to be agile, where you needed strong leadership to kind of set new directions that people may not be comfortable with. Yeah, and this is where this came in as a handy model, if you want. Yeah. But the idea is to share leadership by encouraging as well employees to be leaders, no focus on a single leader. So this was actually a little bit better, but again, it was still this kind of focus to the top, right? Now, this is actually the following area. Followership is a more recent concept. And this is one that is still very powerful today. So you will see these theorems as well will emerge more and more in your daily routines. So we have already started with this. You have a lot of followers. You become a member of the APM, for example, Association for Project Management. You become a professional member of PMI. That is literally what it's about. It's about building the skill set up so you can be a supportive follower. Now, follower had as well a very strange connotation. Particularly in America, nobody wanted to be a follower. Yeah? This is so boring. You're just a follower. Yeah? You have no mind for yourself. Yeah? This was kind of the connotation. But there was, of course, something else in it. So here, first of all, take seriously the idea that the leaders do not exist without a follower. Yeah? So in other words, there's a beautiful, if you Google movement, a leader is a lonely nut until one embraces them. Yeah? So if you have one follower and you are the leader, then you are not a lonely nut anymore or crazy person. Yeah? Then you are actually a leader. So there's an edge between this. Yeah? So if you're just doing something and just say, follow me, and nobody follows, then you're just somebody shouting, follow me, right? So leaders and followers mutually defining. So this is very important. Yeah? Without a leader, there's no follower, and without a follower, there's no leader. I hope that makes sense. There's an effort to undermine as well the dominance of the leader in the literature. So this had been overemphasized and empirically created kind of, a lot of theories that didn't work. So quite frankly, not theories. And as a focus of leadership research and as a dominant construct in media and popular culture, this is still true, right? So we are still idealizing the leader. We had earlier Trump or Putin. This is as well true for Jobs from Apple at the time, right? So those are all individuals that are kind of celebrated for how great they are. Or Elon Musk at the moment, they are from Tesla. Like, oh yeah, let's listen to him. But actually, those guys already, Elon Musk is already a little bit better. To kind of stresses that it's his team, but again, there's still a lot wrong with it. Yeah. And focus on the idea that most of us are more often followers than leaders. Yeah. So this is as well the recognition, that you too can be a leader, of course, in your team interactions, even if you don't have the formal role. And then Kelly was one of the key researchers in that area. So he kind of developed the dichotomy, so two-dimensional model of followership. So here was independent critical thinking versus dependent uncritical thinking. And then you have positive energy and active engagement versus negative energy and passive engagement. And he came again up, so he had clearly read Brass research, so he came as well up with a wonderful Cartesian coordination system, and he had as well numbers, so it's not less sophisticated. But this is what it was. So here we are in 1988. So he said, you can actually assess your followers, your team members, in the situation. Now this is important, right? So this depends on the role. So you may have, as a project team, different roles as team members, right, as followers. And some of your team members may be very proactive about it. If you think pragmatically about it, this can be because it's in your professional interest, you're very confident. So you may arrive at, wait a minute, where are we? So independent. So here, negative energy and passive engagement. So if we are here and dependent and uncritical thinking, so this is, he termed it cheap or passive followers. I prefer passive followers for obvious reasons. This is, you have the situation, somebody doesn't want to do it, but has no clue how to do it either. So this is actually a very bad combination. So here you are highly dependent and uncritical thinking. So if you as a project manager kind of tell them, come on, that this needs doing, and this is how it's done, then you actually have like a response to it, but you may not move them nonetheless, right? So this is recognizing where they are actually. Then you have here the Yeah, this is not nice illustrated, right? I should have really redone that. But anyway, here you have the negative, and independent critical thinking is there. So you give them a task, but they're an expert in it, and they think like, what are we talking about? This is crazy stuff. Why am I supposed to do that? This is not even up to the minimum professional standard, right? Then you are probably alienating your followers. Now you have kind of the pragmatic follower as well in between, so that kind of is critical and does things, but doesn't really buy in. So the person that is in your project team survives, yeah, it changes, but is not really supporting. Alienated, yeah, I forgot to say. So you have this very dynamic here. If you have alienated followers and they're independent and critical thinking, they may verbally express that. So you may recognize them as a rebel, yeah, or the whistleblower. Yeah. Actually, this was a key concept that came afterwards, right? If you have somebody that sees like that we are doing something crazy in the project management, yeah, or in the project, in our product, and we are poisoning the neighboring rivers by accident, and we are not doing anything about that, and if this person is completely alienated, like, hey, you're not respecting the environment, then you may have a big problem as a project manager if you don't take this serious, right? So there's first of all a mismatch in values, but then second of all, the alienated person will be highly motivated to probably act on that. Yeah? And if you are not addressing this as a project manager, then maybe next stage is media or going to the government agencies that are responsible for it, right? So and this is where the whistleblowing came from. Now then we have as well dependent uncritical thinking, but positive energy and active engagement. Yes person or conformist followers. Yeah. So again, this had a bad reputation. But if you think about it, in most teams, you probably will have this aspect too as a role. And here, people may actually enforce the wrong behavior. So if you are asking, coming back to the environmental issues, yeah, you have a team members and your environmental specialist doesn't recognize that you're poisoning the river, and he says, yeah, let's go ahead, yeah, and doesn't speak up. Now then you have a problem, right? So there's a limitation as well with uncritical thinking. So, but again, this comes as well. And then we have here in the corner independent critical thinking and positive energy and active engagement. But this can be as well extremely challenging as a leadership style because you have here somebody highly motivated. Yeah. So, shall I make the joke? I work together with a colleague and we do team facilitation and ethical dilemmas. And he always points out that that is like a child that is very high achieving, very smart, but wants to do everything right and confronts everybody that doesn't play up to it. Now this is a star or extremely exemplary follower, but can be very challenging for any leader. So in a project team, you may be consistently reminded what has gone wrong. Yeah? So, but again, with positive attitude, yeah. So this has its own merit, and this was actually something that was quite powerful as a concept. Yeah, just to maybe go one back. Those followership roles, they actually stick up empirically. Now they are incredibly difficult to research because you're just basically confirming that the different roles and situations basically stuck up to the empiric. Yeah, so to do research like this, you are really giving your life commitment away to following people around. Yeah, so this becomes an incredible, unhandy model to research actually, but empirically very powerful. Yeah. Now Mendel's model was a romance leadership, and it's not as drastic as it sounds. Here was attention on followers and leaders secondary, and the focus on how followers construct leaders. So this is actually very smart because you can then analyze what your team members embrace as successful leadership. Yeah? Now here the focus on how followers construct leaders, leaders romanticized and influenced, exaggerated by followers. So this is where recognition that depending on how you have grown up and how you have accepted leadership in action, you may reproduce it in a project, for example. Yeah? In a different situation, you actually may embrace certain leadership styles, And other leadership styles, you are like, no, this doesn't work for me. Yeah, or you correspond respectively. Yeah? Now here, leadership is a product of the way organization members interact with each other. So this is even leadership in a team situation. Yeah? So coming back to my expert argument, with poisoning the river, as an environmentalist or environmental specialist, kind of flags. Yeah, let's go with him. So flags up like, hey guys, this is a pollutant. The river is getting poisoned. He may lead with this. Yeah, if you embrace this now, like, oh yeah, he's an environmental specialist. Well, what can we do? Yeah, then you're embracing him as a leader, although he may just be a team member, right? So and this is basically where we have a little bit more thorough empirical concept. Now with this you have as well leadership emerges out of social contagion. Well, what is contagion? What is a social contagion? What do you think? Oh, this is my colleague. Hello. Come in, join us. Yeah. So what could be, what is a contagion, just as a word?
Spread. Spreading.
Yeah, spreading. So contagion is something that changes. Yeah. So we know it probably largely from diseases. Yeah. Or something like that. Yeah. So contagion is normally something that pollutes or changes the dynamic. And literally the example that I gave you with the environmental team member, if you want, they're very simplified. This is such a person that would stand up against a consistent direction that you run as a team, right? And he speaks out and says like, no, wait a minute, we have to do something here differently because the route we are going at the moment towards our goal is the wrong one, right? And here leadership kind of emerges out of the speaking up due to the role that the different team members may have or the expertise that you hold, right? So this is at least the argument. Now, this was actually considered, so you had here as well leadership qualities exist in a sense-making of followers, not objective qualities. Yeah, so you need as well kind of your whole team or the followers to actually sing along with you along the project setting, which is actually quite, well, if you look at the former model, where we had the different styles of commitment and how willing your team members are to go along, this is actually quite a challenge in its first place. Yeah, but you come as well to the problem that those are actually not objective qualities. Yeah? So you have here other factors that influences, and leader effective only as long as the network of relations around the leader construct him or her as such. So this means as well, you have to have, of course, good relationships with your team members. Yeah. So if you think of our project environment, if you're working a lot with subcontractors or specialist contractors that just come in to do a particular job for you, this is incredibly difficult. It's nearly impossible, right? You really try to build a relationship on the first interaction and try to hope that you may have another project with them to build a relationship, but this is actually very difficult. Now, it's as well decentering the idea of the heroic leader. So this is a concept that we had covered before. And followers take on greater significance, so importance of constructive dissent. Yeah? So you want to empower as a project manager or initial structural leader as well your team members and followers to be actually happy to kind of disagree, right? So to speak up and kind of have corrective action for your cause. Yeah, this is well, indirectly a critique of the heroic leadership myth. So this is particular by Blanchard and Lewin as well that we had earlier, a direct critique really. Yeah. Now, there were as well certain implications of the critical communication approach. So it rejected separation of leader and follower, and leadership is socially constructed. And of course, as well, the communication is central to construction process. And this is as well kind of the post-heroic view of leadership. Yeah. With this, we have as well the critical focus on issues of power and control. But again, we had that already in an earlier chapter. So in a way, this is really kind of a roundup for this. Now, where are we then today with our leadership styles and as well the powers that we can actually exercise? So we clearly still have a role power. As a project manager in an organization, you are placed as a leader, right? As a facilitator, so you won't get around that. Now, if you kind of sum the former approaches up, we come kind of to four forces that are kind of the dominant patterns that are still remain. So here you have leadership and disciplinary power, yeah, and we had that already. What was disciplinary power again? Do you remember that? I mean, the word itself says it, right? Discipline. What does that mean? We need first a discipline, right? This is tricky. What could be discipline in here?
More focused toward getting things done.
Yeah, focus towards getting things done. But in our team members, do we have disciplines? It could be, right? If we work with a trade-based or professional team, then each team member probably has actually a discipline that they're subscribing to, right? Now, this is, of course, highly structured, as you're saying. Yeah, in reality, in a project, we are actually goal-oriented. So as long as we as a team perform well to actually get the job done, this is normally quite good, right? Now, with the leadership and disciplinary power, we had a theory change. So here you are actually in a quite tough position. Here the leader is consistently assessed in terms of leadership ability and change management skills. So a need for a change master. So arguably, your role is in the very notion of facilitating the change of the situation to your team, to your followers. Yeah? So leaders constructed as valuable intellectual capital, if you want. Yeah? So you're facilitating here the right answers from your team members. You try to encourage that they're actually performing towards a goal, of course. And here, this is the toughest part. Use of performance appraisal, 360 feedback, and executive coaching. So we had that already earlier. What does it mean, 360 feedback again? How do we get here feedback as a leader? What do you think? 360 feedback. Has anybody experienced that?
Feedback from everyone.
Yes, you're spot on. Yeah. So you are literally trying to get feedback from everybody involved. Yeah. Actually, for the benefit of you, if we go for the associate professor, for example, at Northumbria University, we have as well as 360 feedback. And we don't just have it in the organization, we are even nominating external non-academic members. Yeah? So normally you would go with something like company leaders or maybe students that you had in the past. Yeah, but the idea is here that everybody gives critical feedback on certain criteria of performance. And here it's really the facilitation of how well you are actually including the different, if you go back this slide, the disagreement of your team members towards a goal to achieve it, right? That is actually quite tricky, right? And has anybody done 360 feedback before? I had it in my old, long time ago, in PepsiCo, we had that regularly. This is actually quite a harsh approach. So often in American companies, you don't like the confrontation too much. So what you do is you interview each team member whilst the team leader or the project manager sits in the parallel room and listens to it. And then you hear all the feedback. Yeah? And I was lucky, so my team members didn't, well, they were not too harsh, but my colleague before came out in tears. Yeah. So it does, particularly if you're not prepared, I have to say this is not how 360 feedback should go, but 360 feedback is of course a very blunt approach. And here we have as well the executive coaching coming in. Yeah? So the recognition that a past leader or somebody that is actually specialized on training you on your cognitive skills, on your way you're responding to your followers, how you're kind of encouraging and engaging with them, is a new concept in this. Yeah? But it's now very common. So in many companies you get that. What is the soft form of of a coach? What do we get in most companies when you start in a new company?
Training.
Yeah?
Training.
Yeah, training. Okay, so training is kind of setting the, but it's not very personalized, right? So we try it, we kind of adopt it, and then we know what to do. But what are roles that we have in companies? Do we have somebody that supports us? Yeah? Yeah, mentor is one that is very personalized, right? Arguably, line manager arguably too. But mentor really has that role already nearly to coach, right? So the argument is that you work through narratives. Not sure that always happens. Yeah, but the idea is that from the narratives you can kind of compare your perspectives. And you can learn due to that process. Okay, so that was the leadership and disciplinary power. We had as well the resistance leadership. So this is as well the descent. You see where this is coming from, right? So viewed as a form of leadership. So it's a notion as well that you embrace your followers, particularly if you have expertise teams, to actually disagree when they see that we're going in the wrong direction or that we miss out important information or maybe critical behavior that is required to kind of steer the project against the wall, be it due to disasters or maybe not doing the legally right thing, right? And this is really aiming at challenging conventional assumptions and existing power relations. And as I mentioned earlier, the phenomena that was observed with this was as well whistleblowing as resistance to leadership. So this was a big phenomena. This is not very new. Did you remember famous whistleblowers of the past? So more recently we had a few, right? Who became famous with whistleblowing? Yeah, Julian Assange is one. So who is he? Yeah, WikiLeaks founder. Yeah, this is an institutional platform to kind of give arguably whistleblowers a platform to share their information for external sources to assess if it's actually kind of worth, descending, right? So to speak. Other ones? Where does whistleblowing come from? Is this a new phenomena, or did we always have that? What do you think? Any ideas of the past? Did we have that before? More rare, yeah? Yeah, at the moment, institutionally, we work actually against it. Yeah, so they've clearly not read the theorems. Yeah, there's something going wrong. But as I mentioned, yeah, so leadership theorems are always kind of 20 years ahead of what happens in practice. Yeah, so you have to be patient here. Yeah, and in 10 years, you're on a good trip with this. Yeah, there were a few. So Snowden is another one. Schwarz is another one. As well, the kind of basis of the internet were actually phenomena where this came out, where you had highly motivated followers that were very critical of leadership decisions that were maybe exclusive or had certain dynamics like that. But actually, the dissent idea comes actually in the leadership theory from the wrongdoings of American banks around 2000. This was actually where governance was as well reinvented, and it had to do with leaders having done unethical, well, arguably unethical decisions and had actually rigged the market. Yeah, but you had some analysts that were clearly not happy. They felt that was outrageous and wrong, and they basically spoke up. And this is where this came from. And the notion was, if you don't embrace as a leader your dissent from your followers, you are missing out the opportunity to correct the course whilst you can, because the banks went basically bust. So in a way, there was a huge fear that if you don't do this, that you actually miss out on corrective actions whilst you can. And this became as well a leadership style, so whistleblowing as a resistance leadership and creating possibilities for organizational transformation. So that this was a direct benefit for this, particularly in troubling times. So if you have an economic or political environment that is very unstable, then you should actually probably listen more carefully to this. Because not necessarily do all the decisions, but start considering it. Now another style that became dominant is the narrative leadership styles. So here, and this is what coaching and mentoring is about, right? So stories as framing mechanisms for leaders. So stories function as a distributed leadership. So stories construct regularly employees as leaders. So you basically have to engage in a narrative where you give your team or your followers the possibility to kind of look at how you can achieve the goal, and by the narrative they set as well agendas for the rest of your team. So this is a very powerful device, and you can see what they emphasize as the focus, right? So you become aware of what's important to their role, to their participation in your team. So here, stories exhibit the function of leadership. Stories of leadership can as well endure longer than organizational leaders. So we have that quite often. You will see that in many companies that good leadership is actually still kind of manifested in the myths or stories of good leadership of the past. Yeah? Did you have an example of such? What does a good leader do? Has anybody heard something like this in recent news? Actually, there's a lot of recent news, particularly around the examples that you named earlier, Donald Trump and Putin. But is there such a story that we are you aware of any story of great leadership or good leadership of the past? Or maybe in your company? Or past organization? Yeah, you are smiling? No?
I'm just trying not to mention Churchill in front of the chairman.
Oh, no, yeah, please go ahead. So Churchill, yeah, and what was he famous for?
Determined leadership.
Yeah, so arguably visionary, determined leadership, yeah? So even in hard times, he saw the way out, yeah? And this is quite powerful in itself, right? So particularly if there are desperate times, I think the quote went along those lines, right? In desperate times, there was something with a vision, yeah. But a lot of stories like that actually survive even the leadership role of your project, of your organizational leadership, and actually manifest a certain culture, what is actually eligible, yeah? Or what is allowed. And a lot of current leaders know this as well, so they try to probably reclaim old leadership quotes, right? And say like, look, I'm just acting like this person. So this works as well both ways, right? Sometimes that is done not so successful, but anyway. Yeah, so narratives, very strong element. And last but not least is gender and leadership. So here we had people like Rosner. So women leaders have an interactive leadership style versus male leaders command and control style. So this is kind of associated with gender, right? So this is actually quite interesting. So as well implying that as a leader you get actually away with command and control, whilst women have to actually play an interactive leadership style. Yeah? So command and control would be probably questioned or would be felt as very masculine. Yeah? So you could play, if we think of a current example, maybe Theresa May, yeah, just to be a little bit controversial. Which is she a very interactive leader or is she very command and control? Quick poll, who thinks very interactive leadership style? Oh, just me. I should have asked the other way around. Command and control? Okay, and the rest is indifferent, yeah? So we had a few hands up here for command and control. Yeah, so she actually has a very masculine leadership style, a very male associate, which is maybe surprising, but maybe tells you as well something about what is expected from a leader, yeah? Now, with this you come as well critiqued for particular with agenda, ignoring the context, making styles universal, and turning a stereotype into a virtue. Yeah, so yeah, in a way, if you're a woman, you actually start up on the more difficult style, right? You recognize it straight away. Yeah, so there's certain an element, but recognize, yeah, with May, if you have a masculine style, this seems to be recognized as a universal leadership style, at least in many social communities, right? Another one is as well ignoring power relations, so the risk of leaving woman leader in touchy-feely roles. So again, we have repeatedly seen that if you speak to team members or subordinates of female leaders, and women try to lead through an interactive style, the rebellion is often, so in a charismatic leader, you see that he's angry or frustrated with you, and with a female leader, yeah, arguably we still perceive, particularly if we're in autocratic settings where command and control style is dominant, we don't see the woman suddenly as angry and like, yeah, maybe frustrated. Emotions, this is so different. Yeah? So there's still a framing in the mind of team members and followers, which if you look at it objective, if you neutralize the gender, you will see that this is a perception, it's a social construct, right? But we had that before. So this is actually quite a dooming perspective. Yeah? So unfortunate, yeah? So as women, you have to kind of still sadly fight against that current. Yeah? So it's still a phenomena around. Now with this, you had as well Fletcher, women who adopt post-heroic styles of leadership tend to be, well, get disappeared or don't credit for the work. So again, the new leadership styles, although already embraced, don't seem to get the recognition as the command and control styles. So this is a big issue. And with this, you have as well the glass cliff. So women leaders often find themselves in a precarious position once they have broken the glass ceiling. Yeah, there's an element of despair behind it. So there's still an evaluation on two different levels, yeah, which is a huge dilemma, of course. And women are often hired as well during crisis, which is another horrendous scenario because you are actually in an environment where failure is kind of inherent in the situation rather than anything to do with capability, right? So be aware that there's a whole body of literature, of course, around this. So depending on the social or cultural construct that you're entering in, yeah, depending where your projects perform, there may be still expectations in regard to that. Yeah? So keep an eye out for that. Yeah. Now in conclusion, a critical-oriented definition of leadership to kind of finish up. Leadership is a coordinated social process through which people communicatively construct and experiment with new possibilities for thought and action. Yeah, so embrace this idea as well that if some of your team members actually disagree here or speak up, and they do so particularly within their roles or they have a concern, don't dismiss this. This is a huge resource for you, right? So you want to embrace this as well and kind of consider it and integrate it and keep as well in mind the two different leadership evaluations for yourself. Remember, evaluate the least liked coworker. Yeah? This is a good indicator where you are at the moment. Yeah? So you can then see if you're more relationship-oriented or task-oriented. And if you're task-oriented, make sure that you're considering the inputs relevant to the roles that may sit a little bit outside, right? So a lot of the risks are the unforeseeable parts. Yeah? So such possibilities are recognized by the group or organization as moving beyond self-interest and meeting a collective higher good. So this comes again from Bjorn. So at a project, it doesn't just have to be the higher good, right? It's a goal orientation of the project. But again, this is an important part. Within this communication process, individuals may be constructed as leaders who help guide and facilitate in decision-making and action. So again, particularly in expert teams, or if you work in research and design, or as well the front end of inception of projects, right? You really want to enable your followers or your team members to kind of contribute with their ideas, their expertise, what you have actually recruited them for, right, in the project team. So not really surprising. Yeah? Okay, and any questions? Has anybody experienced this leadership style exactly like that? Or been in a project team like this? Okay, yeah, first of all, we have to look out as well for this, I guess, yeah. But if you are, so I had the luxury of having been part in projects like this. If you are, it's a very vitalizing experience. You will see those are fun projects to be part of. Yeah? But to actually construct those projects is very difficult as a project manager. You're working here as well, often very intensively with the people to keep that momentum going. Okay, this is it for our lecture. If you don't have any questions, we can call it for now. I will see you for the seminar. Make sure that you check as well if you received your peer review. So we had already one. Yeah, for you, we have to have a look later. Yeah, that we actually make sure that you have access to your peer reviews. Yeah. Has anybody else problems with the submission peer review? So you didn't get the peer review?
I didn't get the peer review for the assignment.
Okay, so we have a look as well. Just make sure you come early for 3, yeah, for the seminar. That we have a look at this. Yeah.
I got the same reviews twice.
Oh, so this is the same. I have a feeling that maybe a submission got stuck. So again, I have to log in and then probably download you the other review.
And the thing is, we submitted together, and he got my reviews.
Okay. Yeah, that was the one where you wrote like,
Yeah.
this is our paper. Yeah, we had one more of this.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, super. Okay, we have a look at that at 3, yeah? And then solve it so you can all push on with your final submission as well. Yeah? Okay, super. See you later, yeah? Thank you.